Hi everybody, I'm Jackie Epperson with Chroma Salon. I'm really excited to share with you a balayage redhead tutorial to really showcase how fun it is to paint redheads and to be able to give them the brightness that they always desire. So I hope that this gives you a ton of tips and tricks, and don't forget to follow me and to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram at Jackie Epp.
So this is our model. Her name is Kimberly, and she's actually a hairstylist within my salon. She has an amazing natural color to her hair. Her hair is so beautiful, and she's pretty much worn it natural for probably the last 3 years or so. And she decided she was ready for something a little different, some brightness. And I want to remind everybody, when you're deciding to color a redhead, you need to be very aware that their hair tends to be a little stubborn. So, kind of no matter what the consistency, the texture, the thickness, it really tends to be a little more resistant. So, you always want to amp up your formula a little more than you would on any other client. So, what we're using today is all L'Oreal Professional Studio Blonde Lighteners. I'm going to use Multi Techniques powder with 40 volume, and I'm adding in Smart Bond to protect all those bonds of her hair and make sure that we just really keep everything super, super healthy. Multi Techniques powder is amazing. It gives you up to 8 levels of lift, so it's our powerhouse lightener. Next, we're going to move on to tray setup. So you really want to keep a very clean working space. As you can see, I have a well brush that goes into my lightener bowl, and I also have a brush I'm going to paint with. I'm showing you the consistency of the product that I'm using. It's super creamy, it's really amazing. It's not so thick that I'm having to work really hard to paint it on, but it's also thick enough that it's not seeping through as I'm painting. So also using perforated plastic is great. So here is Kim. I have her parted off. As you can see, I've parted off a diamond on her head. This is going from about 1 inch from the front of her hairline back to about 1 inch above the top of her ear, back right at the place where her occipital bone drops down. So this way it's leaving me enough room to paint all this underneath, and I'm actually leaving the top kind of rooty. So we'll paint a few pieces but not many. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually separating the head into 4 quadrants. I'm going to start on the back right section, and I'm going to separate this into a little triangle off of right at the nape of her neck. So these pieces I'm painting right here, I'm actually painting them on the underneath. I want these to be able to show up when she puts her hair in a ponytail. The other thing that's really important about these pieces is when she brings her hair forward, like girls with long hair do, they bring their hair forward and they put it in front of their shoulders. These pieces that get painted underneath are going to be what pop around the front of their face. It's really important to remember these pieces. Girls love to have that brightness come forward. If you don't paint any of these, when they bring their hair forward, it's really dark under there. So you can see I'm painting the underneath section, not the top. So these are the only places where I'm going to paint this underneath, but I want to make sure that that's really nice and clean. It's going to give her those really bright, fun pieces. I'm using cotton to protect her skin so that when I lay that piece down, she's not getting lightener right up against her neck. I think this is a really amazing way to frame the face when you're painting balayage and to give them some pieces underneath without doing what we call a quote unquote full balayage. So it's always really important to remember these. It's a really great add-on service too if you want to add on a little bit to what you would consider a partial balayage. You can really throw like 4 or 5 pieces total on the underneath part, and you can add a little extra money to your ticket and your client reaps the full benefit of that. So that's all it is. I painted 2 pieces underneath there. I'm now going to split this section in half, and I'm going to start painting the underneath part. So I've parted this in half, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my V's. I want to make sure and kind of think about where these V's are going to hit on the head. I'm doing a mixture of single point balayage and double point balayage. I'm using enough lightener to paint on nice and thick so that these pieces get to their full lifting capability with my lightener. I find a lot of the times stylists don't paint lightener thick enough, and the lightener dries out before the hair gets light. And so when they go to rinse the hair, they're not receiving the brightness that they're hoping for. The other thing I want to be very aware of is what I'm leaving out. So it's not necessarily just the size of the V that you're taking, it's also very important to think about what hair is left on the ends. Not only what are you painting and how big is that piece going to be when it sticks out the bottom, but also the hair in between your pieces, making sure that you're leaving some depth. The only time you don't want to leave depth on the end of the hair is when you're doing a true ombre, where they want to go, all those ends want to be light. You would want to make sure and paint every single hair on the ends of the head to make sure that you're receiving that true color fade. But for Kimberly, we want to make sure and leave out some depth. She has such an amazing natural color. We want to make sure that you see some of that going throughout her hair. So you can see the first one I did was a single, and this one is a double. So I'm making sure that I'm getting full saturation on that last third and that I'm getting a good balance of double point, which is going to give you a little more blending, and single point, which is going to give you the most dimension. So now I've taken down my next section, and what I'm doing is I'm making sure to brick lay my painting pieces so that they don't lay right on top of the last ones. So just be really thoughtful about where you're placing your pieces, and making sure that they brick lay really is the easiest way to make sure you get lots of dimension and lots of blending and you don't end up with stripes. Okay, so I've finished the back right quadrant and now I'm working into the back left quadrant. So I've go ahead and parted off right at the top of the ear, and I'm gonna paint those ponytail pieces, those little pieces that will hang out underneath her hair. They'll either be visible when she pulls her hair forward, or they will be visible when she puts her hair up into a high top knot. So I'm just going to part those into a few smaller sections and paint them along the hairline, making sure that when she puts her hair up, you can actually see them. I'm also laying cotton right underneath there again, just to make sure that none of that lightener touches her neck and that her skin is protected. So I'm going to go ahead and just work through this back left section the same way, sectioning it into two more sections after my nape section, and making sure to just paint enough pieces, but also being aware of the pieces that are left out so that she still has some dimension. I'm also making sure that I brick lay the pieces on top of each other so that when her hair falls, it will just be nice and blended and there won't be any streaks or any dark spots. Okay, so we moved on to the front right side. So we'll go ahead and just work in horizontal section, working up the side of the head. Kimberly carries most of her hair in the back of her head, so I'm not going to overpaint and put a ton of pieces around her face. I am making sure, very aware, that I'm taking out the baby hairs that are located right up next to her face, because at this point, if you paint those baby hairs, they're always going to look like breakage. We always want to make sure that we look like our painting is purposeful, and no matter how well you paint those little tiny hairs, for some reason they just always look like little short baby breakage. So I'm making sure to place my cotton, even though it doesn't want to stay there, to protect her face and make sure we don't get lightener on anyone's skin. I'm just going to continue to work up the side of her head, not only being aware of the pieces that I'm picking up and how many I'm painting, but also being very aware of what is being left out so that I make sure I don't create too bright of a blonde right around her face, as we still want to make sure she stays fairly rooty. So I'm going to go ahead and just speed up the clip and paint up her head, and I'll stop right as we get to the top. Okay, so now I've reached the top. So what I'm doing at the very top is I'm going to paint two single point balayage pieces right next to each other. This creates a big bright piece that goes from the top of her hair all the way down, but also leaves enough depth so that she can make those bright pieces pop. All right, so I'm going ahead and I'm going to speed up my clip. We're working on the front left side now, just working in the exact same manner as the front right, working up the side of the head in horizontal sections, focusing on creating brightness right around the face, and making sure to leave enough depth so that those bright pieces look really, really bright and beautiful. I'm going to end in the same manner with two single point balayage pieces right up at the top, matching my two single point balayage pieces on the right hand side, and I'm just going to continue to work. So here's the finished look of the underneath portion of Kimberly's hair. It's all wrapped up, looking very even all the way through. I'm going to go ahead and pull down her top section, and I'm going to paint probably about 10 pieces or so all the way around, just giving her a nice rooty look, but this will really create a uniformity and blend in her natural color that she has at the top with the lightened underneath that we've created. This is just going to bring everything together. So we put Kim under a processor for about 25 minutes. I then brought her into the shampoo bowls. You can see how the lightener flakes off once it's all dry. I then rinsed her and we applied Dia-Lite Gloss 9.01 and Clear with Smart Bond mixed in. That sat for about 10 minutes. I want to make sure and keep her blonde nice and bright, so the 9.01 is just a neutral with a little bit of a blue base to keep her nice and bright. I mixed Smart Bond in to help protect her bonds and just seal everything in. We then rinsed her gloss out and we applied Smart Bond Step 2 for 10 minutes. After that had processed, I shampooed her with the Nutrifier from L'Oreal Professionnel and then styled her up with the Dual Stylers Listen Pump Up and Mythic Oil. This is her hair all nice and straight. You can see it's really nice and blended, but it does have that bright pops on the end. I wanted you to see her hair completely straight so you could see that it still looks beautiful. You do not have to curl balayage in order to make it look beautiful. She has those bright pops right up next to her face and underneath, so when she puts her hair up in a ponytail, it's going to have those nice bright kicks underneath there too. I then went ahead and I curled her and gave her a beautiful wave so everybody could see how beautiful that looks, and super easy, just a few sections, nothing crazy. Just because you want somebody to have that brightness doesn't mean you have to go and paint 1,000 pieces on their head. I'm loving how this turned out. Kimberly loves how it turned out, and I'm just really excited that you were able to share this, and I hope that everybody learned something, and feel free to comment and make sure that you let me know what other kind of balayage tutorials you would love to see in the future. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching our tutorial. I'm super excited at how everything turned out. My beautiful model and hairstylist, Kimberly, was amazing. So you can also follow her on Instagram at KimberlyFoti, and you can follow the salon at chromasalontacoma.com. And don't forget to follow me at Jackie Up. Thanks so much.